about 130 kids there, 100 good kids just having a good time. Out of that 130, predominantly African American, 7 knuckleheads ruined the whole thing for everybody. That's what this is all about. I do not believe that officer showed up to the subdivision with the intention, I'm going to go out here and slang some black kids around. I do not believe that. That is not the way the community is set up, and that's not the community we live in.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there's a man who was at the pool. He's a black talk show host, a member of the community there, obviously. He saw what happened, and he's echoing what a lot of adults are saying, black and white, in defense of the police officer who's been suspended. And, of course, the media and others are calling for his head on a silver platter. Joining us now on the Malzberg panel, Brad Hirschfield, author of You Don't Have to Be Wrong for Me to Be Right, president of CLAL, the wisdomdaily.com, and Ford O'Connell, Republican strategist, political analyst, and author of Hail Mary. Hello, Ford.
How we doing, Steve?
All right, and Brad. All right, let me start with you, Ford, and you know, the media, and it kind of seems like it's the accepted outcome that this guy's going to lose his job and have to go into hiding. This, by the way, this black eyewitness who's a talk show host talked about the death threats he's been getting for saying that race had nothing to do with it.
Well, the media's into isms. It doesn't matter whether it's sexism, racism. They want to push an agenda and they want to push a narrative. I will say one thing about the cop. He probably shouldn't have pulled out the gun, and that's why he's on administrative leave. That said, I think there's a larger issue here generationally, and that is that the younger generation doesn't respect authority and has no humility and thinks it can do whatever it wants. So, look, there's a lot more to understand here, and as time goes on, hopefully we'll get to the bottom of this, but I don't think the mainstream media will be a help.
Right?
I don't disagree with anything Ford said. There's just no evidence that race played a role. And I say that as someone who thinks race remains an issue in this country. It remains a serious issue in this country. There are places where it's an issue in policing and community relations. There's just no evidence that that is the case here. In fact, this was an example of really bad policing, and he should be held accountable for that. I don't know if that means he should lose his job. I think the thing to do in these situations is when anyone starts making outsized claims like, oh, it's clear he came to bust some black heads. Ask when someone makes that claim, what do they have to gain by making it? So, for example, when Reverend Al Sharpton comes out swinging on this before he knows any of the facts and just does it based on the view of the video, guess what? That's a good business day for him.
Right.
So yeah, that's what you got to attend to.
But you said bad policing. What about what Ford said about no respect for the cops? Because he pushed down other people, and the other people stayed down. He patted them on the head and pushed them, and they stayed down. This girl would not stay down. What should he have done? Let her run because she wouldn't respect the police?
Well, first of all, sometimes you do that, but you're 100% right. When a police officer gives you a lawful order, you obey it. That's not the time to question him. There are other times that if you think it's inappropriate. But the interesting thing is here, she was actually trying to leave the scene. This officer let his emotions get away with him.
Well,
he started screaming, I've got 30 pounds of equipment. Why are you doing this to me?
It's easy
No,
to say his
Steve, by
emotions.
any account, this
Ford,
was bad
I disagree
policing.
with you, and of course with Brad also. He had every right to pull his gun. He was in a prone position trying to push this girl down. Two guys come upon him out of nowhere. One of them, as someone here pointed out to me, had his hand like towards the back of his pants. He had every right to pull that gun. He put it right back in his holster.
Look, I'm a native Texan. I don't think that the court in Texas would say that you had the right to escalate deadly force in that case. I do agree with you, though, Steve, that the point is he has to assess the situation. He doesn't know who the bad guys are and the good guys are, and it's better to make sure that everyone stays in place.
We're coming back with more of the panel, folks. More of the panel, but first we want your feedback, folks. Let us know what you think of today's show and possibly the topics we're discussing, including this one, certainly. What you need to do is log on to newsmaxtv.com/comments, newsmaxtv.com/comments.
This should be an easy case. Frankly, it probably shouldn't even been taken up. Since we're going to get a ruling pretty quick, I think it's important for us to go ahead and assume that the Supreme Court's going to do what most legal scholars who've looked at this would expect them to do.
All right, welcome back to the Malzberg panel. Brad Hirschfield and Ford O'Connell. And you know, Ford, in that soliloquy of not answering the direct question of what should the states prepare for if, in fact, the court overturns the mandate, the provision, and he never answered that question. He said that it's not only Democrats. The Republicans who helped draw up the health care bill agree also. What? No Republicans voted for this. What Republicans helped draw up this health care bill?
This is what we call revisionist history. He's trying to have a preemptive attack and have the media on his side because he doesn't have a contingency plan, and his signature legislative achievement, at least in his thinking, is about to go bye-bye via the Supreme Court. So he's doing everything he can and throwing the kitchen sink out there to try to save his own reputation and blame it on those evil Republicans.
What I'm afraid of, Brad, is that he knows, because they've decided this already in all likelihood, and he probably has a leak, and he probably knows that I'm not going to have to deal with what the states are going to do because they're going to uphold it, and that's why I said they shouldn't have taken it up in the first place, and I'm going to look like a genius.
Well, if that's the case, and I'm not a big fan of those kind of theories, but if that's the case, it's even worse that he did this. And I wonder if he appreciates the irony that by attacking the legitimacy of the Supreme Court relative to the presidency, he put himself in the same camp as Ben Carson and Mike Huckabee. Not two guys I think the president likes to pal around with. I mean, there's something deeply off about the president going abroad and criticizing a fundamental piece of our democracy, which is the system of checks and balances. Whatever the Supreme Court does, whether they get it right or they get it wrong, they are doing their job. And for him to criticize them because he doesn't like the outcome, that's not right.
Well, Ford, of course,
Brad, wait a minute. Hold on. There's one more point to this we're obviously forgetting. He's a constitutional legal
Yes,
what
it
makes
proves,
it terrible.
Ford, that really in the end, all of us, right, left, and center, we want the answer we want, and everything else lines up behind that.
He did it at the State of the Union after Citizens United in front of the Supreme Court, and he went overseas yesterday and did it there before the verdict is in. Okay, now he also was asked about his strategy to fight ISIS going forward. Same press conference, I believe, and here's what he said about that.
So we're reviewing a range of plans for how we might do that, essentially accelerating the number of Iraqi forces that are properly trained and equipped and have a focused strategy and good leadership. And when a finalized plan is presented to me by the Pentagon, then I will share it with the American people. It's not, we don't yet have a complete strategy because it requires commitments on the part of the Iraqis as well.
All right. Is it, first of all, and this is the same thing he said months ago, and when he said it months ago it was outrageous because this has been going on for well over a year, near 2 years already. So to say there's still no plan and blaming it on the Pentagon hasn't presented him with one, Ford, are we supposed to really believe that the Pentagon has been sitting around whistling, or that this man has no interest in instituting that plan?
Both. He has no sense of urgency in dismantling ISIS. As long as it's several continents away, he can continue to play ostrich with a head in the sand. And blaming the Pentagon, liberals don't like the military. This is perfect for his base. The problem is the Pentagon said, what the blank is he talking about? We've been giving him several options. He just chooses not to act.
I mean, Brad, this is dereliction of duty. I mean, forget the fact that he lies like he breathes. I mean, this is just... Yeah, I mean, ISIS is a major threat to the world and to the U.S. and their inspired terrorists who come here, and he's doing nothing.
Well, I'll give him credit for one thing. He admitted there's no plan, and I think the world knows that. I think ISIS knows it. From the last story to this, we've gone from the objectionable to the downright dangerous, and I think embedded in...
We haven't heard that before. Oh, yeah, from you.
From me.
Yes.
And I think the challenge is that really here one of the big problems is they don't know what to do. And the idea that somehow...
Well, they is not the Pentagon. They is the president.
Well, I think in general we have a very serious problem because there's an imagination, there's a hope that somehow you can train up and arm enough Iraqis to take this fight to ISIS. That's an open question on the ground there.
Ford, I believe that's the president's goal and dream. The Pentagon knows that can't be done.
Absolutely, and the Pentagon also knows that forget the Iraqis. They're in 12 other countries around the world. There's things you can do, and the number one is to engage in targets in the command and control center in Syria, and they just don't want to do it. They're going to leave this for the next president, and regardless of party, it's going to be a huge whopper of a problem, and that's just the bottom line.
It is very unfortunate. Final word, Brad, real quick.
No, I think this is kicking the can down the road. And you can do that with some issues, but my God, when there's a massive army whose will is to impose a caliphate upon the world.
And they're slaughtering Christians by the day. And you're a devout Christian in the White House.
There is a genocide against Christians going on. You can't kick that can down the road.
Less. He's not moved by the slaughter of Christians, Jews, or police officers. Just a fact. Thank you, panel. Andrew Klavan is next. Don't go away.